How you guys doing? Checking on sound and video, everything working okay? Hi, Dom. How you doing? I'm going to start off with a share, and we can talk about that. Hang on a second. Hi, Britt. Michael, good to see you. Okay. We got a half hour, so figured I'd get started right away. Hey, neighbor, we got a little snow this morning. Hi, John. Okie doke. I wanted to. I get all these questions. How come you don't like Silicon Hairsprings? And so let me go into it. And it's not so much the functionality of hairsprings. It's more of what I want to do as a mechanical watch collector. Okay. So let me tell you about the benefits first so that, first of all, it's amagnetic, which means that it's not as affected. This is silicon. It's not affected by magnetic fields. Thermal stability, which means the heat, when it gets hot and cold, it's not affected by that. Lightweight, well, that neither here nor there, since high precision manufacturing. High precision manufacturing, it allows for precise shaping and consistent geometry, leading to improved accuracy. It's for a mass producing is much easier with silicon hairsprings. No argument there. Low friction due to their smooth surface requiring minimal lubrication. That's another advantage, no lubrication. And the durability, this is resistant to wear and tear over time. That's sort of a maybe. And the reason it's a maybe, because we haven't had it that long. And as Roger Smith pointed out, here we got watches 300 years old made of transitional metals that are working just fine. So this is sort of is what really I'm addressing, is not so much the functionality of it, because the functionality is fine. The functionality of a quartz watch was even better than a mechanical watch, and even better than both of them is a smartwatch. So, but so this is sort of the context that that I want to talk about these in, is that it's not that you have something that doesn't work. And as far as anti-innovation, it's hardly silicon is hardly an innovation. It's been around for a while. It took them a while to figure out how to make the hairspring mass produced. You can do it inexpensively and have each one is just right. Okay. If that's what you want, knock yourself out. Okay. I don't want them. You have to remember is that the whole concept of high horology was introduced as a defense against cheap and highly accurate quartz watches. Okay. And it wasn't due to the fact that mechanical watches are better than quartz watches or more accurate. They're not. They're just not. You can get a $10 quartz watch and it'll keep accurate time more so than a $200,000 Gerbil Enforcé. So that's really not the issue. The issue is more of, and also in terms of innovation, what you can do with a traditional mechanical watch. One of the downsides, apparently, is silicon is brittle, and if you whack your watch just wrong, it'll pop it, and you're you got a watch that's not going to run because of the silicon, the brittleness of the silicon. The other thing is that you can't adjust it. If you have you can't use the swan neck regulator, a regular regulator, Agon pit regulator. None of those regulators, because they're curb regulators that adjust the tension of the spring and the swing of the beat of the balance wheel. So that's essentially, but the idea that this is an innovation, it's, well, okay, if you want to call it that, but it's sort of like if you're collecting Model T Fords and somebody puts in a 2025 BMW engine in it, it's no longer a Model T Ford you're collecting. It's suddenly something else. And this is the way I view Silicon Hairspring. Also, too, you don't find it being used by your top watchmakers. And someone would say, well, what about Patek Philippe? Well, Patek Philippe may not be as hot as they think they are. When you look at the independent watchmakers and you look at the more recent ones, the Geneva seal, they lost their Geneva seal. So it's not, I love Patek Philippe. I had one, the ones before 2009, before they started stuffing that stuff in there. Love them. But afterwards, it was something that was lost. The craftsmanship, the uniqueness. They've got these things that are all perfect. They're cheaper. The idea that they're more expensive is nuts. The development of it was very expensive, but post-development, you get these big sheets, and they come out on those Silicon Hairsprings come out on sheets. Okay, so that's essentially why I don't like them. If you like them, fine. Your watch will probably be less likely to have any kind of magnetization or any of the other advantages that I just read off. Yeah, there are a lot of good things about them for a watch that you're still going to use your iPhone or your computer or your smartwatch to set it with. Okay, that's so. I mean, it's like the difference between not caring for it and really just not what I see as part of this hobby, as opposed to some kind of religious rancor against it. Okay, guys, let's see. Hi, Eduardus. Mushu Del Chanel. How you doing? Let's see. Dino. Hey, Graham. Brit. Smartwatches don't last. I don't know. My wife's smartwatch, her Apple Watch, is doing just fine. Quartz watches are better. Well, maybe. I don't have either one. Hey, James, how you doing? Is the Louis Vuitton LF023 movement a good horology? They have, James, they use, what's the name of it? Fabriques du Temps, which is their movement maker. And the guys who are involved in it are very, very good. So, yeah, I would imagine it is. And good morning. Hey, Benes, for high accuracy, they generally tend to use high frequency balances. But yeah, that's another thing. You take a look at your tip top watchmakers, and they use a lower frequency. And by lower, I simply mean below 4 hertz. So you see 3 and 2.5 hertz. And Carrie Wooten and all of these other guys who are Philippe Dufour, you name it, and you're going to find that there. To me, that's sort of like, you got to have, I think, a little more craftsmanship involved if you're going to use a lower frequency. That may not be true, but it sounds true to me. I believe Omega has watches where silicon hairsprings can be adjusted. Yeah, Alexander, they have what they call a blade, and here they got their old their silicon hairspring. And then they have this, looks like a little square thing like this. They call it a blade for some reason. I think that blade stretches, and so you can adjust it that way. How well that works, I don't know. I haven't heard much about it. I heard it was introduced, and then it was sort of like they quit talking about it. Dominic, I know why some of Rolexes have moved to silicon for service and economy to maintain their promise of plus 2 seconds a day. That's a good point. Yeah, they may have, but look at the majority of Rolex watches, of the men's watches. They did put silicon in some of the women's watches in the what's it called, the Pearl Diver or Pearl Master, and they also put it in. They had this other one, it's a great looking watch. I think it was sort of a Cellini or something. It was relatively new, great looking watch. They tried it out on that. Basically, Rolex, Swatch, and who is the other one? Patek Philippe all went together, and then they invested in developing these hairsprings. And until some time in the future, they're the only ones that can use it. But if you look at top watchmakers, what kind of hairsprings do they have? They'll have a Straumann hairspring. Rolex will have a Parachrome hairspring. The top German watches will have a Karl Haas hairspring. They're not jumping into the silicon. And like I said, this is if you want an accurate watch, get a smartwatch, or that was really never the issue. And this is why I'm sort of befuddled a bit by Zenith and Defy Labs, where they keep jacking up the hairspring speeds. So how do I feel about the spring drive? Well, the spring drive, here you have brilliant technology, or brilliant mechanical stuff. And what the spring drive does is that they figured out a way to generate an electrical current for quartz movement. And like I said, it's brilliant. And again, this is something that I think if you want to watch that you're going to wear every day and you really rely on it for accuracy and not your iPhone, then that would be a watch to get. But I mean, for me, for a collector, it doesn't do anything for me. But that doesn't, that's, like I said, that's neither here nor there. Hey, talking timepieces. I would say that a more apt comparison would be making the pistons from carbon fiber or the 3D printing replica intake manifold. Okay, talking timepieces. I'll believe you. Hi, Stephen. Michael, I do agree that silicon is not high horology, but as a physician working in hospitals. Oh, listen, Michael, I worked for years in programming, and in fact, I even did some hardware. I took a robot and connected it up to a Commodore 64 computer by building a board with 8 light bulbs on it and running wires out the back from the computer into the robot, and then working back from binary to hexadecimal to finally to assembly level language, and then brought it all home again. All of that was in silicon. I've got nothing. I mean, that couldn't have been done without the silicon resistors and everything else that computers have for silicon. My iPhone that I use all the time, or my computer that I'm using now, yeah, they're all full of silicon. I got nothing against silicon, But if I'm collecting mechanical watches, just like if I were collecting Model T Fords or something like that, you're simply, I think, to say, okay, well, I got a solution. Well, you already have a solution in your non-mechanical technology that we sort of swimming in today. Anyway, so that this is, people are on me about how come you don't like it, and so I thought this would be a good time to explain it. I'm not gonna pay, we pay a lot for our watches, and I don't like I prefer them not to have, a number of things, and I prefer for them to have. I'd like better on glass, I like better this, I like better that. Silicon's something I just don't want, and people who like it, they got it. They can use it all they want to. Oh, John, that's an interesting thing you said because I tell you, the thing that got hurt, that was smacked in the head by smart watches, and smart watches are a lot. They're very. You can have, my wife wears one all the time, and you can change the dial to anything you want. And so she got the Hermes version from Apple, and it's got a horsey on it. So but if she wants to change it to anything, that she can. Well, what happened, if you look at the watch sales, Swatches, everyone else's went up to some not so much, some more so, but the Swatch watches went way down. Not the Swatch-owned brands like Omega and Blancpain and Breguet and those watches, but rather the ones that were like that. And so, what do? This is this may be going. The right now, the thing that was interesting about Blancpain was that they came with Frederic Piguet. Frederic Piguet was the movement maker, and it was really funny because at one time I think Blancpain owned Frederic Piguet, and then at another time Frederic Piguet owned Blancpain. So when both of them were bought by ETA or whoever it was, they Swatch, we'll say that. They said, okay, Blancpain, uh, we're going to call this Blancpain development or something like that. They gave another name for the Frederic Piguet movement, and so okay, here they got this great movement maker in Frederic Piguet with a noted brand, Blancpain. Okay, well now they put once they put silicon in it on top of everything else, it's no longer a Frederic Piguet, and I don't think they care about that anymore. Let me show you one funny example. This is one way to get a Blancpain without any silicon. Hang on a second. I love this. Whoops. Hang on a second. I screwed up. Okay. And here we go. Okay. Here, this watch, this is the Blancpain. It's called Blancpain and Swatch, but so are all of the other ones. In the New Yorker, it comes up as Omega and Swatch and Blancpain and Swatch and Breguet and Swatch and all of their ads. They think that's important. Well, here's the movement they have is the System 51. Let me see if I can move this around. That doesn't matter. Anyway, so this movement, the System 51, has one screw that you can take out, but everything else is totally done by machines. I mean, there's nothing in the System 51. You can't work on it or anything. It's sort of solidly in there, keeps great time. But here's the irony. They don't use a silicon hairspring on the System 51, and they have it at 3 hertz. And so to me, is that the Blancpain times Swatch, this $400 one that people are going like, oh, well, that's not a Blancpain, but or that's not a 50 Fathoms. It's like it's junk because of the anyway. Well, I thought, it's sort of an irony, but here is where you're going to have an end to other kind of watches who people want because of their historic value. Now you take the historic development out of it and you start putting other things in it. And no, the innovation, good grief, there's all kinds of interesting innovations. Well, you take, for example, the Agon pit regulator, you take a number of different things that have been done by contemporary watchmakers without using, without quote cheating, or they use some of the ones that were developed like a Remontois or even a Fusee and chain. So there's a lot of innovations and some other ones that can't think of them off the top of my head that I've seen that come up, and they've got, they're using transitional metals and some very interesting innovations. One is actually is a guy, Peter Barcelona came up with it, one that made the watch a solid watch without any holes in it for the Oceania. And then his innovation was figuring out how to wind the thing without you use magnets somehow. Anyway, okay. Oh, Joseph D's got it. Yeah, he's buy the watch you want. End of story. Okay. Joseph D. I'm simply reverted this because this is the one I want. People say, well, how come you don't want silicon hairsprings? And this is what I thought would be a good time we could explain it. HRM, interestingly enough, Swatch uses a titanium alloy on some of their movements and silicon on others, but they run similarly accurate. Yeah, look, when you consider the Straumann hairspring, which is, it's not just it's used by all of it. They sell tens of thousands of those things. And this is H. Moser, and they're selling what? About 2,000 watches a year and 50,000 hairsprings. So something's going on. But those are made of titanium and niobium. And they, just like you said, they're very good. But unless Swatch picked it up, doing the same thing, which they, hats off to them if they did. Why do you think Rolex isn't adopting silicon? Are they certainly not high horology? Dino, I think there was probably a discussion about that. I would love to have heard the discussion. They're using some of it. Why hasn't they have the parachrome hairspring? One thing, they don't need it. That's one thing. The other thing is, I don't know. I think they also have a curb regulator, but I'm not positive and so that may be another reason. But they invested in it. I think they wanted it in case it was people wanted it. I don't collect Rolexes, but I know a lot of people that do, and I'd be very curious to know what Rolex lovers think of that. Do we need approval to own a watch that has a hoppy? What? No, Joseph D. My $600 Hamilton khaki field with the Neighborcron hairspring ran with COSC for over 2 years straight and didn't even regulate it. That's the other thing. I made my grandson a watch, and then I used my toothpick on the regulator arm that they have on it was a 6498 clone from China. That thing runs at CUSC too, because I regulated that thing. Spent some time, had a good time, got it regulated just right. Yeah, you can do that now w- with a silicon. That thing comes out of the box, total COSC, not a problem at all, with all kinds of guarantees that it's going to work just really well. And, fine, that's good if that's what you want. I take this as a philosophical discussion. Exactly. That's exactly what it is, Dino. Um, I have a quartz watch in my collection I really enjoy. Yeah, me too. I've got what is it? I'm trying to think. Um, a Mickey Mouse watch that's quartz. That's a lot of fun to have. I'd rather have a Girard-Perregaux one, but what the heck? I'll go with Mickey Mouse. Hi, Gok Turk. Current Hamilton H10 movements are extremely accurate within meta standard. Probably, just about all of the ones, because Hamilton is owned by Swatch, and all of the ones owned by Swatch and by Patek Philippe and some of them by Rolex. I mean, the ones with Silicon Hairsprings are going to have that really good accuracy. There's no two ways about it. And they're not going to have this, they're not going to have that, and they're not going to have a regulator. So that's the downside. To me, it's the downside. But, if that's what you're happy with, it's not a matter of, you know, you should have this or you should have that. It's a matter, I mean, people go, well, how come you do it? Why don't you like Silicon Hairspring? Simply wanted to explain why I don't want them. I mean, it's like there's things the watch collection is that if I wanted perfect timing, that is a boat that left the dock with my smartwatch, all right, or my iPhone, because those things are connected up to some kind of atomic clock somewhere, and their accuracy all over the place. And just about everybody, even if you have a silicon hairspring, you're going to set your watch with your iPhone, would be my guess. But like I said, is that I don't go around poking at people. I think, like Dino said, it's very much a philosophical matter. It's a matter of how you look at it. So that's the way I look at it. Also, too, I'm very much of a conformist in this sense. When I look at the very best watchmakers, they have things that I thought they must be good because they're the top watchmakers. Like Jean-Marc Vitorek, who I'm fortunate enough to meet with, Caribou and Lanin, Philippe Dufour, a lot of these other guys, Gerbil Forcé, all of these, if you look at their watches, they have a very low frequency. Being a conformist, that's what I want. I want something with a low, there must be something there for a lower frequency. And I talked to a number of, when I was in Geneva, and plus another time, I talked to a number of these top watchmakers, and I asked, I said, what do you think of Silvo? I mean, it's sort of like, what are you insulting me or something? You have that. On the other hand, you got some guy with a watch he loves and he's marching along with it and it keeps great time. He's happy. Like you mentioned that Hamilton, perfectly happy with a Hamilton. I think a lot of people, in fact, I think a lot of people have already, have bought that Blanc Pawn Swatch 50 Fathoms. And if you look at the dial, it looks like a Blanc Pawn. It says Blanc Pawn on it. And then it also says 50 Fathom, but it's only $400 rather than, let's say, 10,000 or whatever they would call, or whatever 50 Fathoms are going for otherwise. But I think, see, this was the reaction that I think Swatch had to the fact that their lower end just got tanked for some reason. And I think it was because of smartwatches. So they have to say, well, what would be attractive to with a somebody with a lower budget that wouldn't be another Swatch? Well, look at all of these names that they own. They said, well, why don't we do this? We'll put in a System 51. Those are cheap. They work until they don't work. And, you know, that's that. And that's what they did. And I think they're gonna do very, very well. On top of that, Blank Pond had a on the back of them over the, I don't know how they did it, but it was, they have all these different oceans. You can have one with an Indian Ocean or the Pacific, the Antarctic, any ocean you want. Interesting, you know, that to me is a very interesting way to do it. Not a watch because I'm a movement freak, not a watch I particularly want, but still it's sort of an interesting approach. Hi, Eduardus. How often do you regulate your watches with traditional hairsprings? Um, Good question. I don't know if they ever get really out of whack, is the ones that I can regulate with a curb regulator, are a swan neck. You know, if they need it, then I'll do it. That's about it. Hi, Timmy. Uh, Glad you like it. Dominic, why is Rolex slowly moving to silicon hairspring so during service they can have less skilled watchmakers? Dominic, that's another issue, and I think you have hit a very important nail on the head. Like you take Patek Philippe, they don't want to mess with their watches once they sell them, and I think that may be one of the reasons they went to silicon. On the other hand, these, you know, but if they want to factor out watchmakers that are doing the who can adjust the watches, then let's support our watchmakers. I'll put it that way. I think you're right though. Hamilton, you're right. I like those. Hi, Alex. Not all quartz movements are the same. Some Swiss quartz movements are extremely well made and even decorated. Yeah, Alex, I agree with that. You take FP Journe's Elegante. He developed the quartz movement system himself and did this really wonderfully interesting thing with a mechanical little rotor that when it was stopped for a half an hour, it would then go into this sort of a sleep mode that would keep the time but not move the hands, which takes up most of the energy. Yeah, I mean, you can have that, and it's not, you know, it sort of like what you want to do as a watch collector is up to you. But I kept getting all of these questions. Well, how come you do this? How come you do that? And just I thought, well, this would be a good time, and we'll have an explanation of the way I think about it. I'm not a proselytizer. I mean, if somebody wants to go out and they can get all the silicon they want. I spent a career in silicon, so maybe that has something to do with it. Hey, Truman. One big thing about Rolex people don't take into account their own foundry and material quality with the fit and finish are unmatched in the business. Don't know about that. That would be, I'm sure that's what they say, but I don't know if that's correct or not. I, you know, it may, if that's the case, what do they make? 1.5 million watches a year. I don't know what they say that they make, but that was the best estimate that I got. So yeah, they have really good standards and so forth. I agree to that, but I don't know if they're unmatched or not. we've got there's one way to do that is that, and again, I get this from our experience with Larique. We ran into a problem because there was just a little difference between the size of the case and the movement. Now, with the Larique watches, we don't put the movement in there and then have some kind of filler around it to keep it from rattling around. But there's very much we have specially made cases for that. Rolex, on the other hand, they're dealing with a big, massive number, and so they're also dealing with the precision that I will bet you anything. They got a little nanotech in there, making sure that everything meets the specs they have. But yeah, they're good. Nobody would argue with that. I don't know if they're unmatched in another kind of quality. Hi, Michael. I hope after this discussion, the hairspring debate will be put to rest. The topic seems to dominate the conversation on this channel. Just my humble opinion. Well, what do you want to talk about? Whether we should have loom or not, Michael? Tell me what you think is important. This is something, like I said, this may come up in a lot of different contexts, but I don't think, well, they say loom or no loom, stop seconds or no stop seconds. What are you going to put to rest? You can talk about anything we want to. So there. Hey, John Primeton. Whoops. Okay, it is. Okay, yeah, I gotta run. Smoko, let me see. We're talking about silicon. Metal can be reformed sometimes. James. Hi, James Gary Hill. I have a Citizen limited edition Spider-Man watch with the titanium eco drive. Ah, boy. Okay. What has more craft? A hand finish movement with silicon hairspring or an off the shelf movement with never rock? Never rocks. I mean, look, it is that Smoko, you, you have something that is going to be invariable and brittle in silicon. Keep that in mind. Okay, guys, I got to run. Thank you all. Going back, Michael Ostis, what do you want to talk about this afternoon at 4:00? Got to have another topic. So you name the topic if you're tired of talking about silicon. What do you folks think about the Tudor in-house movements? Have silicon now, unfortunately. I'll see you guys. If I don't see you this afternoon, have a great Christmas. Take care. Or whatever other holiday you have.